Welcome to Doc Trailers, your source for information on documentary films. Today I'm going to be interviewing Amirose Eisenback on her film Equal Playing Field. But as always, we're going to watch the trailer first.
What doesn't challenge you doesn't change you. When I was living in Azerbaijan, it was a culmination of a lot of frustrations. They funded the men's team, but they wouldn't fund the women's team. I can't watch a women's football match on TV. I look at the media coverage, there are more stories about horses than women. If I didn't do something as an individual, then really what am I doing here? I phoned up Erin and I said, hey mate, I've had this idea. Let's go and play the highest altitude football match ever with all women.
And all of a sudden, the momentum behind the game got a whole lot bigger than either of us ever expected.
It snowballed. It started from this bunch of mates and became this huge global movement.
Football for women in Saudi doesn't exist, and I just really want us to exist.
Had women's football been able to take root and flourish and grow and be exported all over the world 100 years ago, not only would sport be different, society would be different.
If we have a voice and we have a little bit of power to get up and speak for someone else and say something, we have to do it. And I couldn't think of anything more important in my life to do than come here.
From a medical side, this is crazy. Asking them to play a full 90-minute soccer game. It is certainly life-threatening.
There's such momentum with what we're doing. There's no way we could stop now. We have to do something else. We decided to come to Jordan and put together another adventure.
We're not thinking about this as doing a highest challenge to a lowest challenge, so much as we're thinking about it as top to bottom change.
Instead of complaining, just get up and start moving in the direction you want to move in. And other people are going to join you. If you're unhappy with it, don't just sit there, do something about it. Do you want to climb a mountain? Do you want to change your life? Do you want to change other people's lives? Come with us.
Okay, Amirose, how would you describe your role on this project and film?
Yes. Labor of love is a giant understatement to describe what this film has meant to me. I feel like it's important to tell a little bit about my story in order to understand the weight of it. I'm just going to kind of start there if you'd like. But basically, I've always been in the film adjacent world. I've always wanted to be a film director, but growing up in my generation, especially, there was maybe, you could count on your hand how many female directors there were. And it felt very impossible. So I always was like in the background, producing for Turner Classic Movies or on camera for AMC and just different things, but not really creating film the way I wanted to. And then my mom got diagnosed with cancer and I moved home to be her caregiver. My family's my world, my everything. And we did lose her, and going through the most immeasurable pain and tragedy, you get through to the other side with a greater sense of purpose. And I've always wanted to elevate others through art, but I feel like it's really hard to know how to get there. And after you go through something and get to the other side of that, your courage is tenfold. And so I quit AMC. I traveled to Asia for 2 months, as you do, my Eat, Pray, Love journey. And then I started my production company called Radiant J Productions, and the J stands for My Mom, Jane. And this was the first film under my company. So I feel like that's really important to know, because to ask my role in this film, I'm the director, I'm the producer, but this was catharsis, this was healing, this was turning pain to power, this was using my voice and my privilege to stand up for others, especially marginalized communities and women. So true labor of love, again, understatement, but that's kind of my involvement.
So you told us about how your company started. What about the film? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so I basically got recruited in from the director at the time of this film. We got connected through yoga and hiking and just, other females in film. And she's like, my old mate from London, Laura Youngson, who's the co-founder of Equal Playing Field. They used to play soccer in London together when Tamara lived there for a bit. And they were really frustrated because they kept having all these major gender inequalities happen, like on the pitch. They were, booted out for like the U5, little boys league, while these like adult women, it was their championship, crazy stuff like that was happening all the time. And they're like, we should do a giant media stunt to raise attention. And Tamara at the time was like, I think I'm supposed to film this and document this somehow. Do you want to be involved? I was like, absolutely. And at that point, I was just consulting, then rose to producer, then rose to co-director. And it just became kind of like my obsession / knowing this was a beautiful film. But that's it, kind of like we got invited to capture it. And then it became a whole other ballgame. I'm going to use a lot of sports analogies.
So you tracked the film the whole way. Did you get a chance yourself to get to Kilimanjaro?
So I unfortunately didn't go to Kili. At the time, I was just consulting and then producing. And, the indie doc world, as Bob can confirm, really, really hard to raise funds for social equity content, period. This will always be our struggle because it matters and it's going to be more niche and smaller audience. And so the funds were just not coming in. And so I had to make the really hard call at the time because, as you can imagine, it's pretty expensive to flights and travel and the actual park fees to climb and all of that. But I was training and I was like really ready. And I wasn't the director at the time. I did go to the Dead Sea. It was a 2-week backpacking trek through the country with these professional athletes. So that was pretty exciting. Lots of elements, desert, heat, sandstorm, fatigue, real fun to try to capture content in those, the terrain.
Cool. So with the 30 players you selected, how did you select them? Was there a tryout? Did you look at diversity? How did you choose those players?
Yeah, so, it really spread like wildfire. As you can see in the beginning of the film, they kind of talk, Aaron Blankenship and Lauren Jensen talk about how like it just exploded. And I think that's, the sports world is small. It's large, but it's small. I feel like once you establish yourself and you get on your, expand your network and it just spreads. And so it was one of those things where you reach out to all players and coaches and, and they talk to their current and past, and it just kind of spread. And we wanted to have as much diversity represented as possible. It's a whole other story to film because we filmed with, every single woman on the mountain, including the coaches, referees, people from both countries who were like guides. And you don't really know, you might have an intention like, wow, we really want someone from America and Saudi, and, you can map all that out, but maybe their story is not as compelling on camera. Maybe, you don't, it's good as a filmmaker to go with an intention and then let the film kind of take over. I don't like being so set in the soundbite that I'm trying to get. I actually want to follow the story. And so it was very important to me to represent women from multiple different countries who look different, who think differently, who have very different upbringings. But in terms of how we selected them, it was really about representing as many diverse stories as we could, because I truly believe that anyone, man or woman, can watch this film and they will identify with one storyline. There's something in one of the storylines that speaks to you. And that was really important to me because the word diversity can mean so many different things. And for me, it was like coming from different parts of the world, different upbringings, different adversity, and then what united them was their love for soccer or football. I've really been going back and forth because most of the people speak football. And I'm the odd man out, but I'm interchangeable.
That's good. So what was your standout moment while working on this film? What left you with a lot of impact?
The women. They've absolutely changed my life. These women are so remarkable. They're leaders in their countries. And, you know, one of the biggest things we were doing outside of the actual world record matches were these clinics with youth, you know, and especially in the Middle East, where so many of these girls, it was their first time ever playing soccer outside. And so getting to experience cultural norms literally shifting before our eyes. There's a great line in the film as well. Moya, she was the second woman on FIFA council in history. She is spectacular. She's done so much for women in the sport, and the most humble, incredible, articulate person to date. And just really hearing that line, you know, you watch all these boys watching these women play, and like, we gifted that field in the Middle East to them. It's called the equal playing field. And so watching truly the power of sport go far beyond what this film is and does was the most rewarding part. And these women and I are still connected on WhatsApp. It's just like spectacular. They're stuck with me forever.
Yeah, that connection thing can be tough sometimes. So you had some great soccer players from around the world to work with. It's a pretty amazing experience getting to meet people that are of different cultures. How would you say the culture in the United States soccer market for women is different than the culture in the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because I'm very aware of my privilege. You know, I'm a white American woman, and I grew up, you know, in an affluent neighborhood, family. Like, I'm very aware, and that's part of why I feel the responsibility to use my privilege to elevate more marginalized communities. And some of the countries that the women, like, we had to fund their trips, we had to start GoFundMe's, we had to, you know, get permission, even though they were adults, from the country or from the family, because there's just so many boundaries that we take for granted in other parts of the world, that, you know, and much like the hijab, like, that was one of the biggest things, you know, even in France right now, they were kind of, it's still happening, right? They were trying to make it illegal for women to wear that while playing. And it's just like, that's one of the other major themes of, like, we shouldn't have to separate our religion from our sport. Like, and so seeing firsthand just how hard it was for so many women to even get there, to participate in it, was such a gift. And, you know, ourselves, we talk about struggle, but it's a whole other experience when women truly are treated like second-class citizens in parts of the countries that we, you know, identified and highlighted.
You know, that's one thing that really stuck with me, is you got a bunch of different women from a bunch of different countries. Where do you see your storyline going from here?
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, film has been one of the greatest characters of my own story. You know, it taught me how to pay attention beyond the confines of my life, and humility and gratitude. And it was a window to diverse culture, right? And I believe that storytelling and film is a universal language, much like soccer. Some of these women don't speak each other's languages. And, you know, Deepa from the movie came, especially the first trip, didn't know any English. No one knew Nepali at the time. She had some people the next trip and felt a lot more of that. But what bravery to just go. And so I feel like that's definitely what I hope the film does. I hope that it's, you know, we've had a few screenings and we do have distribution now, which is exciting. And the hope is just to really lean into the educational piece of it, because I've had, especially men, pull me aside after and said, I've never really seen the issues that women face in sport spelled out this way. And it's the first time I really understood it. And that to me is such a gift, because I'm definitely fighting for women. The last 10 years of my life, like, I've done a lot of incredible work I'm very proud of, but I never want to be preachy. I'm very inclusive. I love men. I want to work together for a more equitable society. And I think a lot of women, feminists, feminazi, there's so many terrible things that women who try to elevate others, and men, the allies, do. And I think that the more we can use this film as an educational tool and as a conversation igniter, and, you know, part of what we want to do is continue like a screening and then a clinic where some of these incredible women in the film, which has happened in so many different countries now, where they can actually teach youth these incredible skills beyond just soccer, because of course it's rooted in that, but you both know, you're captains, what sport teaches us about humility and teamwork and persistence and all the incredible lessons that come, you know, keeping your head held high in the face of a loss and trusting your teammates. I mean, there's just so much there, and the body, you know, mental strength and everything. And I just feel like these are universal gifts that we should share, and the more people that can see this film. And I'm so proud of the global aspect of it. And I just hope that, you know, the more steam we pick up, we can make it available in more countries.
You mentioned the language barrier, and that really, really struck me. And that's a totally brave thing, putting the importance of the film over the comfort of the individual. That is inspirational and hard to do. What were the most challenging parts of making this film, not just for you, but for everybody else, the crew, the people in the film, the staff?
You know, as mentioned, I didn't start as the director, and then I became the director. And so that already in essence was such a challenge, because every artist has a different approach, and to not be able to set the vision from the start and then to have to do a bunch of reshoots. And, you know, there were different characters that I actually chose to focus on that the original director did not. So that already was honestly so much more challenging than if I would have started from day one. Like the Me Too conversation with Danny, that wasn't shot. She didn't even ask those questions. And I was like, this is so important. This is the movement. And this is such a loud conversation right now that happens so much in the sports world. And I thought it was so delicate and beautiful and powerful and inspiring. And so I flew to Montana and I shot that. And so it was finding the pulse and to go deeper from the directorial standpoint. Being on site with all these women, a whole other different challenge, because on one hand, you want to connect and be present. On the other, you need to film. And so it's that delicate dance, because they're fatigued and tired and playing, and they don't want to be pulled aside for an interview, but we need the content. So it's a delicate dance. And I feel like that's, you know, one of the things I'm proud of as an artist, because I come from such a place of truth and authenticity. And I think that I can get better responses from people because I actually take the time to connect with them. I'm not trying to wait for them to say this thing. I think that will happen naturally if you are just having a beautiful, honest conversation that they feel safe. And the only way to really establish that trust is if you come from a true place of just letting the story guide you. So many filmmakers and interviews, I will say, I see this happen in news, in documentaries. They so are concerned about their next question that they're not really listening. You can just see them go, and they're not really listening, opposed to active listening, where it's a dialogue, it's back and forth. And so that's one of the gifts I was really excited about taking over, you know, as director. I oversaw the entire editing process. All of that. And as Bob can confirm, docs are made on the editing floor. The cut, it's just, you can have hours and hours and hours of footage, but you have to find that soul, and that's in the editing room. And it's quite a daunting activity. I went on such a tangent there. Bear with me, but I love this movie.
Tangents are what this is all about. It's documentary filmmaking. So editing can take years. I really hope you didn't spend many, many years editing this film. Could you tell us a little bit about the time frame between how long it took to shoot and how long it took to edit?
Yeah, so June will actually mark the 6th year. So, and that is pretty wild because it came out in November, and obviously we had this pandemic. So it did slow the film down for about 2 years. I mentioned the monetary piece, which again was really hard. And you know, producer 101, you're not supposed to invest your own money. But if the funds aren't coming and you believe in this film to make the impact you want, you have to go on in it. So it did take longer because I was self-funding a lot of it. And the whole process all in all was 6, but originally we were just going to do Kilimanjaro. And then we had so much momentum that instead of making it 2 films, I'm like, we should make it 1. This should be the high to low, which is so poetic in itself. And so, yeah, all in all, 6 years, which is, some docs take even longer. But it's definitely has felt like 6 years.
All right, this film's in the can. Where do you want to see the film live in the future, and where is this going to take your career?
I mean, it's already happening. You know, one of the biggest lessons you have to learn as an artist is to surrender the outcome, at least from an indie artist with little support. When you get to the Ava DuVernays of the world, it's a different story, and she's spectacular. But as you know, this was my directorial debut. This was a very large undertaking. Before, it was a lot of shorts, and this was like full on, shooting in multiple continents, like crazy adventure. And so there's been people along the way that get in your head. There's like, this is an Oscar worthy film, we got to run a campaign and blah blah blah, and it just gets in your head. But in the end, all I've wanted this film to do is make impact. I just want it to make positive impact. I don't care about recouping finances. I don't care about awards. All I want to do is help other women, girls, men as well, see this film and it ignites something inside them. And that's already happened. So I feel like the more word of mouth that can happen, your school, maybe you tell another school who wants to host it, it just happens. And that's my hope, is that it just has a nice, steady, constant build where we can expand it into other countries, because that's kind of how the indie game distribution works, right? They make it kind of limited release, and then we can add more subtitles in other countries. And so the more steam we pick up, the more we can get this to Nepal and get this to some of these other countries that have these, boundaries in terms of like different paywalls and just so many complicated things for distribution. So that's my hope, that it just keeps spreading and building momentum and inspiring people, because these women deserve for the world to see them. They are truly leaders. And I just believe the more people that can find them, the more people they're going to help. I wish this film existed when I was younger. I wish I saw these women when I was younger.
Okay, so why is it important for you to inspire women soccer players, or for that matter, women in general?
Yeah, I touched on just the power of sport. I really believe the power of sport is the power to change lives. I really do. I think, we touched upon all the lessons that are universal. Athletes in general are high performers. They're focused, they're passionate, they're good people. They care about society in general. And I also know in some of these impoverished, countries that we focus on, going to a practice is keeping them out of gangs, keeping them out of violence. They're literal saving lives. And so I just really believe that film is that universal language. And I feel not only a passion, but a deep responsibility to use my voice and my gifts through film to elevate others. And that's all I want to do with my life. After this film, which was the hardest experience, I still want to make movies. So I guess I'm a lifer.
So why is soccer a universal language? Because it truly is. I mean, it's played everywhere.
I think that's a great question. I mean, it's hard to choose my darlings, because I just love sport, and I feel like it varies, the sport that I watch versus the sport that I play. Like, I love watching football, I don't play football. It just all moves me really differently. I think that soccer, the endurance that is needed for these athletes to run and have ball control and the contact, and it's just spectacular. Like, they are the most conditioned athletes. I mean, they're all damn conditioned, but you know what I mean. I just feel like soccer as a sport, it's really hard for me to quantify, because it's also like out in the, it's not, you know, in a court, in a gym, you know, it's not like a basketball. It's just like you and the pitch in the open air with your other teammates running like bats out of hell. And it's just spectacular. You know, I'm not articulating this the best, but it really is just spectacular to watch. It's like a dance. It's like poetry when your team has synergy and you are exactly where you need her to go, right? And it's a dance. It's just a beautiful, beautiful sport to watch.
What has sports done for you in your life? How has it impacted you?
I'm quoting so much of the film, but hey, there's this point in the film where Moya, she speaks about how a different message is given to women, to girls, especially when you start playing at a young age, because I might be a 5-6-year-old little girl and someone's like, your dress is so pretty, right? And maybe I am wearing a pretty dress and that's great. But again, it's commenting on something that's superficial, opposed to, wow, you just scored a goal. That was incredible. You just elevated the team. So that's speaking to the ability versus the physical, you know, on more surface level. And I think that showing what we can do, again, that trust and that resilience and that teamwork and all of that, but to really elevate our capabilities and showing that if we work hard, we can achieve anything, is a message that everyone should receive. And the younger we are able to play sports, the more we kind of just, I really believe that it shapes your entire life. I think that I am a much more focused and dedicated person who really doesn't shy away from challenge, because I always played sport growing up. And I just really believe it's invaluable. And I will have kids one day and they will be playing sport whether they like it or not. Just kidding. They'll choose.
Where do you want to see the next generation in women's sports? What do you see coming at us in the future?
I mean, it's happening, you know, Angel City in LA. It's so incredible. We're getting our first, female soccer team in Los Angeles, and I'm born and raised here. And we have a brand new stadium. You know, it's incredible. And I want equal opportunity. You know, one of the things that Laura talks about as well is how women's sports are just not really covered the same amount. And you always hear the conversation of like, oh, because they're not, watched as much. And then we can throw all these statistics at you that show actually when they're available, they are watched. And so I just want an equal playing field, straight up. I just want every woman, youth, girl to be able to join a league and have no restrictions to the gifts that come with that. And I just want us to not have to have the conversation and to have diversity and inclusion panels. And I want it to just be how it is. And that's what I fight for. I fight for more little girls to not grow up like I did, thinking they couldn't be a director because there were 7 of them. I really just long for equity to be a part of the everyday discourse, opposed to us having to go out of our way to make it a conversation. But we're not there yet. So the programs that you guys have, this film, we have to keep building the bricks for future generations to be able to have those, luxuries, those freedoms. And that's what really keeps me going. I just hope to make it a little easier for the next generation, much like the people with Title IX and everything laid the bricks for us.
2 things. Title IX, is it going away? I mean, there's been a lot of talk about it lately, and I can give you an example in Minnesota. University of Minnesota athletic department got rid of 3 men's sports, and they didn't say this, but you can just see the underlying feature was excuse me, we're getting rid of these sports because they cost too much money. But we're going to finance football, but we're getting rid of men's tennis and men's gymnastics and track and field because we have to keep things balanced with Title IX.
There's always people that want to overturn change, things that are, of course, being political is a part of this entire conversation. The hope is, again, for us to not have to have these conversations much longer because change is just part of our essence, but we're not there yet. They're always going to risk taking away our freedoms and important movements, but I don't think it will ever be overturned because there's too many smart people fighting for change. And in an age of social media, I didn't grow up with social media. You ladies, this has been a part of your life. You can't get away with things the way you used to because everything is documented, everything is public. And so, people always focus on the very loud one negative voice opposed to the hundreds of really positive, supportive people, because that is the cancel culture we live in, which is super toxic. But I think that there's enough smart, passionate, talented humans who care and will never on their watch allow something like that to happen. And I'm definitely one of them. And so are you.
As you sit down to watch your film, what are the takeaways that you want people to bring home with them?
One of the biggest things that I, hope comes from this film is just you truly can do anything. And a lot of people want to create positive change, but they just feel so overwhelmed because they don't know how to start. And it feels like one person can't affect change, but that's how it all begins. Every great idea started with one person. Every great movement started with one person. And so I hope that the people who watch Equal Playing Field, if they have a cause or a team they want to join or a class they want to enroll in or a career that feels impossible, I hope that they realize the only limitations truly are the ones that you're placing on yourself. Because if you just have the courage to go forward and to commit and put the hard work and the love and the passion and the resilience in all of it, I truly believe that you can create change and you can accomplish anything you want. And the more you have that courage to stand sometimes alone on a mountain named Kili, the more you'll find your tribe and the more people will back you. And look what Laura did. She literally had this idea. She called Aaron. It was like 3 a.m. in the US. She's like, I have an idea. And look what this is. And now it's a giant global movement. And that was one beautiful, inspiring, courageous woman. And you all, I have chills. I believe in this so much. And I just, you're at such an important age and your whole life is ahead of you. And I know that it can be terrifying and exciting and daunting, but stay in the present as much as you can because it goes really fast. I was in such a rush. I graduated college early, wanted to start my life, but it really is about the journey, not the destination. And the more you can just find your fulfillment in everyday existence and have the courage to truly go in the direction that is going to feed your soul, that's really what I hope this, the film message really teaches people. Good place to end.
Yeah, it's a great place to end. Well, thank you, and thanks for taking time out of your day to talk about Equal Playing Field.